Hello and welcome to the What is God podcast. I'm Shifra Bloom, your hostess. And on this podcast, I ask people from all walks of life to share their answer to the question, what and where is God? And what does it have to do with me? And so today I have Ruslana Remennikova, and she is an author, sound practitioner, animal whisperer, and innovator who has studied biochemistry at Virginia Commonwealth University and University of North Carolina. And her book is very exciting, is coming out to be launched through Inner Traditions and Bear and Company in 2024. She lives in Richmond, Virginia. And is there anything you want to add to that intro that I missed? Otherwise, I have a question for you.
Schieffer, thanks for having me today. I'm really happy to be here and I'm ready for your question. I like short intros. So what's your
Cool.
question?
I will just add for folks who are listening that Ruslana is a very magical being with a very highly attuned sense of intuition that's really special when you get to interact with her. And so, just to give a little bit of context as to why I'm particularly excited to hear your answer to this question, Ruslana is someone who's deeply studied in the I don't know how you would phrase it, but the mystical and esoteric inner workings of the world in a very practical way. So, with that, the question is how, how would you answer the questions, what and where is God, and what does it have to do with me?
Mhm. So once again, I wanted to thank you for giving me a space to share energy with you because I always feel like especially with you, when we interact, there's something gem-like that forms. We create crystals together, and so it's about really marking the right questions. And I think that this is a type of right question to ask. So I guess the first place that I would begin to segue into what is God is highlighting that for me at this point in time, because we live in the visible world, that physics exists, but in our sleeping world, the law of physics is quite different. But I believe that at this point in time, um, God is less of a place or a destination or even a feeling. Um, God is not a figure. I mean, at the same time, it could be because the term God is an intimate interpretation based off what a person's coherent belief system is. And um, if you are going to ask the person, um, you're going to have a very mixed answer, which is why I like this question a lot because you're able to see what pure light really is, and
Mm.
pure light based off of what philosophers and debaters and empirical approaches is made out of 12 different colors. Um, but when you ask a question of what is God, you're actually listening to a person's frequency, what is in their DNA. And I mention that because DNA is the most um, fortified and intense piece of information that we all carry. And what we say and what we um, remember and how we live our lives is all pertinent with how we treat our DNA. So, what is God in the context of DNA is where I can start to answer that question for me personally.
That's cool. I'm very curious.
Um, I believe that God is evolving consciousness, and being aware of what evolution and what consciousness is together is the most exciting. And when I say exciting, I mean it's at the same time scary and at the same time joyful. They're two things together. Um,
Mm.
and then
Well, I want to pause there for a second. So, what evolution and consciousness is together?
the say so ask that question again.
So you said something about what evolution and consciousness are when they come together. Is that a definition of God, or is that where God is taking us? Can you just explain a little bit more what that means?
I believe that evolving consciousness as a single theme, as a single concept, as a single interface is what God is to me. And
Mm,
that is a deep sense of two concepts. That's what I mean is breaking it
mm,
down to evolution and consciousness together.
mm, mm-hmm,
But I believe it's constantly both. And so in one moment you can look at a flower and let's say a white flower, and based off of what you experienced in that day, based off of what you experienced the day before, based off of what memories you have with a white rose, based off of other cosmic forces or um, emotional movement that you've experienced throughout the day, you're going to have a different relationship
mm,
with this white rose
mm,
in that very moment. If you look at it again, let's say in another minute, you're going to probably have a different feeling towards it. And I'm not saying a polar feeling, but it evolved. And
mm.
so nothing is ever static. And so this type of perspective on what is intertwining everything together as if it's an adhesion to life, right, is what I perceive as God.
Can you
Um,
say that one more time?
the adhesion to what connects everything together
Mm.
as we flow between different states is what I see as God. It's evolving consciousness, it's being aware of our senses and other unknown senses that is constantly shifting in flux.
So
So
God is evolving consciousness, consciousness evolving. That is a definition for God. And the adhesive that brings let me just try and repeat and see if I understood it. So so it's both the evolving consciousness. I love the example of the flower. That's landing for me. And the way that I feel that is like the very consciousness that's flowing through my eyes and my mind and my heart, like my consciousness that's evolving is one expression of God. And then you've said something like, and I'm paraphrasing, of course, but that it's not static, and that in fact, perhaps it cannot be static, and that even a definition of God might not be able to be there, static, in meaning that it's evolving, as is our consciousness, as is our perception. And then you also said something that it's this adhesive that brings everything together. And so I wanted to clarify if that means, like, I could see that meaning two different things. I could see that being the energy that makes me the same person, even from the moment ago when I was angry and the next moment when I'm feeling filled with love. But yet there's some glue that makes me the same person, that could be God energy. And then there's another way I understood that, and I want to know if you mean both or one or the other, which is like the energy that connects you and me together, even though we're separate. So I didn't know if you meant it one particular way or both ways.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that the energy is constantly shifting and changing. Um, and that I realize is a very confronting, natural aspect of what God is, because the meaning of God will change in a person's life many, many times.
Mm,
We wake up each day and we might not even have a relationship with the word God one day, and something will happen and we say the words. This is just an example, but oh my God. And I know that this is a very casual, conventional phrase that we just kind of toss around, but it's also deeply subconscious. Why do we even say the words, oh my God? I know that it is a conditioned form of our kind of way of speaking, but God in general, or source, or maker, or creator, or um, um, a cosmic force, uh, is deeply woven into each and every um, incarnated being as humans today. And the gateway that I see God is through DNA, because DNA is wavelength and frequency. And so being able to tune in to, we call it ourselves, but I mean on a cellular level, um, our DNA, we're able to start to unravel a lot of our talents and gifts and memories that
mm,
um, we see as unconscious. But one of my favorite quotes from Rudolf Steiner, who is a German esoterist, is nothing is essentially unconscious. It is only outside awareness for the time being.
mm,
And I relate to this very much because everything is based off of um, our awareness. For example, when we're even dreaming, dreaming is a form of communication. That's the way I perceive it. When we dream, we enter into a world of ideas, of memories, of intelligence, and we've come a very long way as a culture, since millennia, to understand that actually dreams are a form of communication, um, in different contexts. But so is our DNA, and so is our ability genetically to tune in to our psychism, to our talents and abilities, and being able to connect with the world, to each other in spiritually intimate ways. Um, Telepathy and precognition is um, a very accessible means, and
mm,
every single person is clair anything. We're clairsentients. We're able to naturally um, understand the world through our senses, but for many of us who are interested in understanding how to do that, it's simply tuning in to frequency and to wavelength into our DNA. And this is where I discover that I can connect with God. And
mm,
it's through this evolving consciousness. I was recently reading this book. It hasn't come out yet. I'm endorsing a book for an author at Inner Traditions. His name is David Barreto, and I like what he said about God. Um, so I'm just going to. It's just one or two lines from his book that hasn't come out yet, but it's
mm,
coming out this year. Explaining the concept of God to a physical brain is comparable to explaining electricity to a child, whereas explaining electricity to an electrodynamic scholar is comparable to explaining God to an evolved consciousness. To fully comprehend God, an unimaginable capacity of understanding would be required by the spirits who are incarnated as humans today. And so I'm going to stop there. But
What
I
is this
like
book called?
his book is called it's called Karma and Reincarnation in the Animal Kingdom: The Spiritual Origin of Species. And
Cool.
so, yeah, so what keeps me going as um, as a person who enjoys talking about etheric concepts is evolved consciousness, because it there's infinite possibilities that I find myself floating around, but with discipline, with emotional hygiene, and curiosity about the imaginal realm, I'm able to connect with um, meaningful coincidences, as Dr. Bernie Bateman would say, who is also an author at Inner Traditions, and his um, forte is synchronicity. Um, is we're able to evolve ourselves, because that's what I believe God um, essentially is doing. Is all of us that have the God component is able to shapeshift, is able to telepathically communicate, is able to know what's going to happen ahead of time, is able to love, is able to feel fear, is able to be courageous, and feel empowered. Because why are we um, why are we experience so much beauty, and at the same time we are experiencing so much of a lack of awareness of the beauty around us?
So I have a
Um,
question then, for, people listening, and also to kind of recap, because you've shared so much depth, like so much depth in the last few minutes. And it makes sense because the topic of God is a deep and vast subject. But you're saying all of these ways of being, clairsentient, being telepathic, being able to intuit and be intuitive, all of these things are accessible to anyone. And that evolving consciousness that allows us to access those skills that are available to all of us, um, is, I would say, that part of my question of what does God have to do with me? What I'm hearing from you is like, well, one of the things that is, what does God have to do with me, meaning each of us, is that the God energy is how we access these deeper levels of intuition. So my question, because we could talk about this for hours and hours and hours, but I think to kind of bring this into a really relatable something for our listeners is like, if someone was listening and is fascinated listening to you speak as I am right now, and then going, okay, well, maybe, I feel like a pretty intuitive person, but telepathic, that's next level. Or, maybe someone's like, wow, I wish I could develop my intuition. I wish I could connect to that part of my relationship with God. Like, what would you say to someone who was on that journey? What I'm sure there's many different answers, but what would be one answer of where someone could begin to start to develop a personal relationship to that part of God that is their evolving consciousness that makes them a more intuitive, and aware being in the world?
I really, it comes down to two things, and again, it's based off of our DNA, which is why, I mentioned wavelength and frequency, is to cultivate a good practice of listening,
Mm.
frequency, and observing wavelength.
So can you put that in kind of lay terms?
Yeah. Um, so it's interesting when I give a sound bath, I notice how the energy in the room shifts
And
at
just
the
for people to know, even what a sound bath is, it's like playing the song singing bowls, playing the different instruments, playing the bells, so that there's just a literally like bathing in the frequency of these sounds that you're intentionally putting out there.
Right. So in a sound bath, what many people refer this to is called sound healing. Sound has been empirically proven to be a healing modality. For me, it's a way of exploration of the internal world. Um, and so when I give sound baths, which involve different instruments, I have harps. Well, actually, I only have one crystal bowl because
Mm,
I like to diversify the sound so that people actually tune in to the fabric of sound versus it being just all one sound. I think it helps people uh, listen better when there's a variety of different instruments that
mhm,
I intricately blend together. I have a gong. I have, let's see what else, like bamboo leaves and tuning forks. But what I noticed is when people come in feeling chaotic or in their normal state of entropy,
mm,
I noticed that after they've received a 30-minute sound bath,
mm,
um, it's getting energetically attuned to their own this sound, which is their DNA, and
mm,
the sound of their environment. And I believe this is important, a very important topic, sound,
mm,
which is what my book is about, sound and DNA.
mm,
Um, and so when they leave, they are actually, and this is not, not in a dojo or in a temple or anything that is holy. Um, Although I believe that the holiness exists in every person already. Um, but people tiptoe out.
mhm.
People uh, change their relationship with the space, and I believe that what they're doing is actually realizing how holy they are, but they are expressing it as the environment.
So
And
something about the way you're curating these different frequencies of sound in the room, in the outer world, it's activating the frequency of their DNA, of the consciousness in their DNA to wake up. Is that a way of saying it?
they people are synchronizing their emotions, their muscles, their even their fascia, their bones, their organs. They all synchronize to the sounds, and not only the sounds, but the orchestrating energy, which is me, that
Mm,
of the environment that I'm creating, which is ultimately calm, relaxing.
mhm,
I'm very mindful with how I speak with people.
mhm,
Um, I'm mindful about their emotions and being accurate and concise because although that was one example of this the sound bath, but our conversations on a general day to day affects how we what the information that we absorb is all related to our DNA, to our evolving consciousness. So I gave the
mhm,
example about the sound bath and how people come in feeling chaotic to a very quick shift into rest and recovery. Um, and so the polarization, chaos, rest, recovery is something that we see in ourselves each day. It's something that we see in the world, in different epochs. We see it in different shifts in our human timeline, but it's a cycle, right? Chaos, rest,
mhm,
chaos, rest. And in between, there's an evolving consciousness. And
Mm.
if we are able to be aware of it, right, we're able to make hopefully healthier choices with how we, by healthier, I don't just mean like fixing yourself. I don't mean that at all. I actually mean being aware of our own evolving consciousness, which
Mm.
is God, right? Being able or connecting to your source or what the person's own relationship with creation is. So, um, to
Am
go
I,
back to your question,
yeah.
I believe listening,
Mm.
silence is beautiful. There's a
Mm.
lot of knowledge and information in silence, and also observing awareness. Um, that can be those two are a power duo, and also it can be really scary and
Yeah.
confronting at the same time.
Yeah.
But anything that's scary and confronting is also um, it's a mentor.
Yeah.
So does that answer the question?
I think so. I'll try and recap again. And actually, I really resonated from a different perspective with a lot of what you said as I'm listening. And I'm, everyone's going to filter, like I'm filtering your words through my consciousness. And I'm understanding them in a slightly different way, and it seems like what I got from what you said is as my awareness increases, you could say I'm getting closer to God with increased awareness. And something that was cool of what you said too, talking about the frequencies and the instruments and the frequencies of the instruments and the effect that has on us. But then you brought it to how even the frequency of our speech is so important too. And that clicked for me because in the Kabbalah tradition, the way that creation comes down is really, it didn't even click to me until that moment, is through speech, because you have your beliefs and you have your ideas and you have your thoughts. But the way that something really comes into form, like that bridge from belief and thought to the physical, tangible world, is actually through vibration. And you, as a biochemist, you get that on like a more scientific waves and particles level. That's something that, I haven't studied it from that perspective, but it's all like I feel so excited right now because in the Kabbalah, we talk about how, yeah, if something's going to go from non-form to form, it has to go through speech. It has to, which basically is another way of saying through sound, through speech, through frequency, through waves and particles. So my mind is like, oh my gosh, it makes so much sense.
Yes, and what you just described, um, it in a not unrelated parallel of um, you getting the same or the message connects with you, but in a different synesthesia way, um, is one of the most disputed areas of modern physics, which is quantum entanglement, where two
Mm.
seemingly independent particles appear to be connected to each other in a strange way. And being aware of that is evolving consciousness. So it's really just being aware of how life, even though it presents itself in a completely independent way, or a person, but really this kind of psychism, this kind of energy of realizing that this human experience of the entangled universe um,
Mm.
is God.
Yeah.
So I'll leave it at that.
Mind blown. Yeah. That was beautiful. Thank you. I am really excited for your book to come out, even if I have to wait a whole year. I'm already on your email list, so I know
Thank
I'm gonna
you.
get notified because I feel like there's so much depth, and these are really big and deep concepts that I would love to really read how you break it down in more details to be able to relate more. But I think I imagine that other people listening to this also are going to probably feel the same way and want more because I feel like this was just the very, very, this is like the foreword to the intro to the book kind of thing. So I would love if you could share how people can connect with you and learn more about what you're teaching, because it's really special.
Thank you, Shifra. I'm really grateful, and just speaking with you, I'm also connecting some internal selves together, and I think that I'm also learning from you too as a student. I was telling Dave, my partner, that I the more we place ourselves into learning environments, whether we don't know what we're doing, learning is it captivates it captures observing and listening when you don't know something. um, and so that's why I find myself uh, at 35, um, with a history of different chapters in my life. And I realized it yesterday, just reflecting on this evolving consciousness, why there's so many
Hmm.
um, different parts of my life that can be a book. Um, but it's because I like to learn, I like to watch and listen and experience what evolution and consciousness mean to me.
Speaking of quantum entanglement, which is something I don't totally understand, but it's very interesting that I had a very similar day yesterday where I was actually reflecting on the same things. So perhaps that's perhaps that's not surprising given the conversation.
Albert Einstein called quantum entanglement, quote unquote, spooky action at a distance.
I love it. It makes sense. Hmm.
But I
Cool.
teach meditation, I give meditations. I also am a writing mentor as well, which is where I discovered my own kind of relationship with the world cathartically. Um, so I have a website, ruslanaremennikova.com. And
Can we just like spell that for people who are listening actually? I mean, I'll put it in the show notes, but can you actually spell that for people?
sure, it is
Thank
RUSLANNIKOVA.com.
you. Cool.
Thank you. And I also can be reached by email. So my last name, REMENNIKOVAR at gmail.com.
Okay, so the website doesn't have the R at the end, but the email does.
Yes.
Okay, cool. People can rewind and listen to that, and then they can, and that's cool. That's really amazing. People can contact you as well that way and reach out.
Thank you so much, Shifra.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. So that was a really special episode and answer, and I'm excited to actually re-listen to it again because I feel like there was so much depth that I just want to meditate on different pieces of things that you said, and the white rose and all the different parts of it. And for those of you listening, if you enjoyed, then please subscribe to this podcast, give us a review, give us a like. I'm Shifra Bloom, your hostess. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.